Hi, we're from WHS TV 15, and we're here with Mr. Terrence Holmes, Superintendent of the Wakefield Schools. And today we'll be talking about the school facilities program going on in Wakefield right now. First of all, we're going to start off with Matt Doyle with questions.
Hi, Mr. Holmes. Just a question. Could you just give us a brief overview of what's going on for some of the kids?
Mrs. Broder, please call the main office.
Some of the kids that may not know exactly what's going on. Could you inform them of what the new schools facility project is all about?
Sure. First of all, thank you for the interest of you young people in the school facilities plan. And you will be, sooner than you realize, taxpayers. And so, because this plan is to be implemented through the year 2001, it is likely by that time that some of you will be taxpayers. So you have a very vested interest in this plan. The plan really goes back to 1994, when the town commissioned a school facility study and asked me as the new superintendent to do a full, complete analysis of school facility needs in the community. And working with the committee in terms of educational, financial, social aspects of those plans. And this past summer settled on the plan that we have now advanced to the Wakefield public. That plan essentially consolidates the 7 current elementary schools into 3. 2 new schools. And this past summer settled on the plan that we have now advanced to the Wakefield public. That plan essentially consolidates the 7 current elementary schools into 3. 2 new schools, 1 new school on the Greenwood site, a new school on the Doyle site, and a major renovation and additions to the Dahlberg site. Each of those 3 schools would house approximately 500 to 550 students when complete, and take care of all of the elementary population in this community, kindergarten through grade 5. The plan does include keeping grade 5 students in the elementary schools when we are complete.
How do you plan on consolidating however many schools there are now into 3?
Okay, again, by expanding and making larger schools. Certainly the schools, the Ewell and the Greenwood kids would most likely now be consolidated into the new Greenwood school. The Franklin, the Walton, and the Doyle would be consolidated into the new Doyle school. Montrose and the kids now that have been relocated from the Hurd school to the Dahlberg would be certainly included in the new Dahlberg school. Now there's a little bit of additional work to do around the population in the Franklin area. Not all of the students currently at the Franklin school would go to the new Doyle school. There is some possibility that some of the current Franklin students, depending on where they reside in the community, would go to the Dahlberg. And other students currently at the Franklin might likely end up, when this plan is complete, going to the Greenwood. But the strong majority of young people currently at the Franklin would go to the new Doyle school.
What do you plan on doing with the land?
Yeah, I think
Franklin School is no longer going to be used, so.
I think that's one of the most significant questions that we've been asked in our public forums. What would we do with the excess properties? And clearly, the Montrose would become an excess property. Clearly, the Hurd would become an excess property. The Franklin would become an excess property. There's still some question about what would happen on the Woodville site, and the Walton would become an excess property. And all I can say to you is this time, while we of course are completing this plan, we will continue to use those schools. So those schools will be in existence at least through the year 2001. At that time, it is highly likely that those 4 schools would be accessed. And I mean by that, we would no longer have a need for those schools for elementary student population. At that point, the school committee has determined that we should set up committees from each of the communities in which these schools are, made up of citizens surrounding those schools, with school personnel, and make recommendations on what should be done with those school properties for the future. The ultimate decision is one that is in the hands of the selectmen. In other words, the school department would turn the schools back to the selectmen They would certainly be in the position of determining what ultimately would happen. I would only say that the school committee would like to assure the public that these schools have value, that we would like the continuing purposes of those buildings to be what we call neighborhood friendly, that they would, what we did with those schools, it would fit in the current neighborhood and certainly fit in terms of what the needs of that neighborhood might be. Same new classrooms, the same gymnasiums. There will be an equity to that, which is important. We fully expect, if we can qualify for state funding by June 1st of 1996, that we would receive 64% of that cost from the state, or approximately $24.5 million. The other $13.5 million would come through the local tax levy. In other words, and we will be seeking on January 9th authority to do that bonding authority, to in fact move ahead with the funding of these three school projects. Recognizing again, even with the authority on January 9th, we are not likely to get state support until the year 1998 to start.
Mrs. Farah, please call the main office.
So the election's going to be before the town's sure whether or not they're going to get the funding?
That's correct. In other words, the sequence of events, we certainly know that there is current state legislation that guarantees Wakefield 64% reimbursement for school-approved plans. We have to submit that plan to the state with the local authority to proceed, and then the state will determine when they will fund that. But we're very assured that should we get our plan under the current legislation, which means we have to get it in on June 1st of 1996, we will qualify for the 64% reimbursement.
So, in other words, we get the 64% of the 37.5?
That's right. That's approximately 24.5 million from the state,
Okay.
and the other 13.5 million to come through the local tax levy, a debt exclusion.
Is the tax levy, is that just regular?
Again, that's the property tax that is assessed on your family's homes. Your parents pay taxes to the town to support schools and other municipal services. And we would add to that tax rate a portion of money, proposed to be $114 a year to fully do this over the next 20 years to complete this plan. So that's how it would be funded with local dollars.
So the school part of the bill when will that finalize? When will it?
That's a question
when will the taxes be done,
yeah.
being paid for all the schools?
I was asked that question today by one of the news reporters, and again, assuming that we would get a funding for the first school, which I propose would be the Doyle School project, in the year 1998, the taxpayers would most likely see the first part of the tax assessment in the year 1999. And that would be to pay for that portion of the cost associated with the Doyle project. And I estimate that to be $33 to $35 in that year, increased taxes to pay for that school. Then, if we start the Dahlberg project the next year, in the year 1999, I would expect that the tax bill for it would come due in the year 2000. And then the tax bill for the Greenwood project to come due in the year 2001.
How are you deciding which schools will be built first?
I think that decision has not been finally determined, but the preliminary plan is that the first school would be the Doyle School. And that is because we have determined that the Franklin School is the school which now is in the poorest condition of all of our elementary schools. So we'd like to do the new school that would allow us to transfer the Franklin students into it first. So that is why the Doyle School was chosen as first. Then we would do the Dahlberg, which again would allow for the Montrose, which is the second most needy school. And then lastly, the Greenwood, because that is certainly the school that's, of all the 100-year-old schools, is in the best condition. So it's really based on the condition of the current schools and where we need to shift populations now.
So 1 year, are you just going to say all the kids from Franklin start at the Doyle, or are you gradually going to take 100 or so kids each year?
No,
and move
I
them
think
in
when
as the
the
school's ready for them?
That's a good question, but I think when the new Doyle School is ready, we will move all of the kids that would go to that at that 1 year. So I don't think you will see a phase-in. Now, in some sense, there'll be a phase-in because the Dahlberg won't be finished until the year after. So the Montrose kids won't go to a new school the same year that the Franklin kids go to a new school. There's a school built each year. But by the year 2002, all elementary students in the town of Wakefield should be in a new or totally renovated elementary school.
What happens to the Doyle kids when this new school's being built? Are they still going to school there?
They're
or-
still going to go to the Doyle School because we're going to build the new school on the lower level. Do you know the Doyle
Yeah,
site?
down the hill.
Down the hillside. So we feel we can use the Doyle School while we build the new Doyle School. On the other hand, when we get the Doyle School built, we will move the Walton children into it. And I would propose we would use the Walton School the next year to house the Dahlberg students while we build the major additions and renovations to the Dahlberg. And I think when we do the new Greenwood School, we can also use the Walton School while we build the new Greenwood School. So that's technical, and hopefully that will be worked out with the architects and engineers. But those are issues that have to be solved as we move along.
You said when the Dahlberg school was being renovated, the kids from the Dahlberg would go to the Walton school?
Yes.
While the
It is highly likely, if the Doyle is finished, then the Walton children,
Mr. Ryan,
the
please call the
Franklin
main office.
children, and the Doyle children will go to the new Doyle School. That frees up the Walton to house the Dahlberg children while we do the major additions and renovations at the Dahlberg. So there's a planning and a sequence of events that has been thought through fairly closely.
Would that cause like any problems with the, I don't know, the distance? 'Cause
Yes.
A lot of the,
It will cause some transportation issues, some relocation issues. It will certainly cause some short-term transportation issues for us.
just for the year or so that it's being
Yeah,
built?
just for the year while it's being built, and certainly the offsetting safety issues of building while we have kids in a school. I mean, safety has to come first.
We have about 1 minute left. Do you have anything in closing that you'd like to say?
Well, I again invite you young people to take a special interest in this project. You will be, if you're not already, young adults. You'll be going off to college, 1, 2, 3 years, coming home in 3, 4, 5 years, starting to think about your own families. It may mean that your children will be one of the first 1, 2, or 3 classes in these new schools. So you young people have a special interest in these schools, because I understand, and having talked with many of you, that after college you all want to come back and live in Wakefield and enjoy the quality of life that Wakefield certainly provides for its citizens. You have a great interest in this plan, and you have a very direct interest in it. And so I thank you for taking that interest today.
We thank you for coming.
Good.